So of really deep practice. I was doing 2 and 3 hours a day of practice, and during the part of the quarantine, and then I wrote that book.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like I'm kind of in celebration and enjoy the summer phase. So I've been surfing a lot and relaxing and hanging out with friends. And there's a DJ that plays, has been playing a few Friday nights on the cliffs as the sun's setting. So I've been going there and just like dancing.
That's lovely. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot. There's a lot. I have a lot of clients right now. There's a lot of people that are struggling or going through transformations.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's great. I love what you
for
do.
those, thank you. For those of us that are sovereign and standing tall and shining bright, I think this is the time we've been preparing for. So
I think
listen.
so. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by your book. It has helped so many people.
Thank you.
That's why this podcasting is like my creative endeavor, another branch of how I want to
Yeah.
talk to people and honor them, honor their contributions to the world in whatever
Yeah.
way it is. So
Hmm.
I'm very happy that you're here today and spending some time with me.
It's an honor.
Yeah. So let's get started. So so today I have Master Johnny Blackburn, who's here sharing his story about what he does. And he has two books that I absolutely adore. And the current one that has just recently been released is called, I want to hold it up here for the camera, called Eternal Rising. Ta-da-da! And actually, the other one that I also have in my possession here is called the Presence, Embodying Presence. And I believe that is basically, if you have both of them, you can really understand like your mindset on why you write them. But I feel like for the people who don't really want to read too much, this is the best book to have. Is that right? Yeah. The short version of it.
That's true.
So tell us a
Short
little
and
bit more
inspiring.
inspiring. Yes, tell us your story of how you came about to walk this current path.
Oof, that's a rich question. I had a profound experience at 16, so much so, and had an inner voice experience and had no context for that. And so started to, being a conventional kid by most measures, on the side started reading spiritual texts, read the Bible, read Taoism, Lao Tzu, started reading Buddhism, started reading Sufism. And there was this, because that experience was so profound, there was this deep thirst of sensing the deepest nature of reality. So that started very young, although it's something we'll talk about today. Like there's a simultaneous waking up and growing up process. And so while there was a really powerful state experience, my relative soul and human body and ego still was in its growing up process, and it was only 16. So I had a lot to learn. So that was really the kind of catalyst that started it all. And then in the midst of college, kind of just doing still continue that on the side, very disseparate in that those two components of life. And it wasn't until I asked one profound afternoon, like, there's got to be, almost to the universe, like, there's got to be more to life than this. And very soon after, I had an injury and a failed surgery, and ended up, this isn't my first quarantine, let's say. So I ended up 22 hours a day on the ground. I couldn't even lay in a bed after the failed surgery, and went through 3 days, woe is me, and then decided that wasn't really fun for me to be around, let alone the few people that were taking care of me. So in that time, I left the house maybe 8 times to go to the doctor, but I really started to meditate, and I just read voraciously and really like continued that learning and thirst there. So I look back on that now after kind of having cleaned all the trauma off of it, with really beauty, almost like a Rocky montage or the cultivation montage from some of the great movies.
I love it. I find the page 9 here on Get Up and Use It for Good on
Mm,
the Eternal Rising is
mm,
really about your story.
mm-hmm,
It says here in your early 20s, you had an unexpected injury. It
mm-hmm.
was not improving with physical therapy. So you kind of went on the experimental route. It failed, and then you
Yeah,
were
failed
in bed.
surgery.
Failed surgery. Yeah, you had to be in bed for like 5 months and lay on the ground for 22 hours a day.
Mm-hmm,
So that was a lot of suffering. And you
Mm-hmm.
met an eccentric older man here, like you said, a wise ally who inspired you to take responsibility for your life. Instead of passively relying on drugs and surgery to fix you, and you kind of have to heal yourself naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then although the physical limitation was there, you spend the next 18 months of that time just training and relearning and
Mm-hmm.
developing different levels. And it took about 4 years for full recovery. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a long time.
Different young 20s than most people experience.
Yes. So I understand your mission is to empower and accelerate the evolution of humanity through healing, connecting, developing, and
Mm-hmm.
awakening
Mm-hmm.
the human
Mm-hmm.
potential.
You got
So,
it.
and Johny, I know we share a lot of interest in terms of the healing part, the Tai Chi, the Qigong,
Mm-hmm.
the breath work that
Mm-hmm.
you studied with the previous masters before, but
Mm-hmm.
also you connect them with the personal development, the psychology side, which you've been trained on,
Mm-hmm.
and also developing the awakening in terms of merging the science and the all ancient wisdom
Mm-hmm.
to awaken the human potential. Yeah, so I'm really inspired by your work. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm really happy to have you here today. So tell us a little bit more about what the book is about and who it will help.
Mm-hmm. So the first book is called Embodying Presence, and it involves 20 skills for, as the title describes, embodying presence. So many people have heard of Eckhart Tolle talk about the present moment, but a lot of people, there's a confusion that I find for some people about thinking about that like it's a concept rather than a felt sense. And so there was this process to say, like, what is common between the presence that spiritual teachers point to, between the really beautiful, like you as a therapist and healer, like there's just a really beautiful presence with the quality of connection. The same thing you find with really amazing partners or lovers. And then thirdly, what's the quality of stage presence, or the quality of presence of a star or an executive? In organizations, there's a lot of talk of executive presence. And so there was this deep contemplative question of, like, what is common to all of these? And so sort of the way that the book started was, I didn't intend to write a book. I would just, this was, I don't know, 2015 or something, and I would come out of meditation and I would just have this real clear sense of a process of like grounding and how to do it, and what are the struggles that some people have, or the developmental process of that. And so I would just I just wrote this down and then saved it to the computer. And a few days later another piece, and a week later another piece, and then eventually that process just started expediting. And then there was this sense of like, okay, put this into a book. And why I trusted that process is because there wasn't a part of me that said, oh, I'm going to write a book. It was like the book wanted to be written through me. And I'm really proud of that one. That took 2.5 years. And at the same time, it's the subtitle is developmental guide for therapists and coaches, and basically people that are very serious about self-actualization and awakening. And so that's a more technical book. And so I wanted something that, like, I sort of, after that, I had the sense of like, well, I would hopefully the next one can be more inviting and shorter and inspiring, and more easily digestible.
Excellent. I love that. And there's in the first book here, Embodying Presence,
Mm-hmm.
I read the part where page 62 in terms of emotional presence and freedom, and
Mm-hmm.
this really resonated with me, and I think a lot of people too. Is how do we move through or move out of this word emotion here? Can you share with us a little bit about emotional presence here?
Yeah, as you just named, interestingly, the Latin root of the word emotion is to move through and out. And working with Chi, it's an easy bridge to say, well, emotion is energy in motion, and the interface of it is in our physical body and through the emotion interplays with our biochemistry and physical body, but it also interplays with our subtle energy. And so there's a way in which this emotional experience arises, and if we feel it and sort of can welcome it and allow it to be felt, then it can digest and release. And sometimes it wants to just give us quick information, and sometimes it carries a packet of information, right? So sometimes a little jolt of fear might arise that just says, hey, pay attention, right? And there's a real important survival instinct to that. Or sometimes there might be tension in the solar plexus, and when you presence it and ask it what it's about, it might share one simple sentence about, like, I feel frustrated, that da 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 da. And so I've really just in presence discuss, like, by presencing it, feeling it, and asking it what it's about, have learned so much about people have learned so much about themselves, and they've learned this process to notice. So there's a 5-stage kind of process here. One is notice that there's been a state change. 2 is to use our attention and kind of scan and find it. And when we do, to name and locate it. The latest research out of UCLA, they're doing really cool stuff at UCLA with functional MRI. If any of you guys have ever had, MRIs and looked, the older version, it was just like a snapshot. You just see an image of layers of the body. Well, now they can do that in real time. So we're able to actually see what's happening in the brain and the body. And so they're doing such cool stuff at UCLA. So one of these researchers, Matthew Lieberman, has done a lot of study around emotion, and his tagline is "Name it to tame it," because what they've discovered is when we're triggered, currently most of our blood flow and brain activity is in the frontal area, and when we get triggered, it hijacks more of the limbic emotional brain, and so it's more challenging to think clearly, speak fully, act consciously. And so what he's discovered is the very act of naming it does 2 things. One, it immediately decreases the intensity. So all of a sudden there's a decrease of emotional intensity in the body. You start to move blood flow and brain activity more back to the front, and I think it starts to organize the process of digesting and releasing it. So I get people to really, when they have awareness, to start practicing naming and locating their body, because that's really the beginning of that process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. I understand that. You mentioned also a lot of times we, some therapists encourage distraction or addiction,
Right.
or
Right.
some sort of a numbing medication, which I see all the time. Suppression of the emotions, or fake smiling, or internalizing the emotions, and we don't really get to express that. And in my work, I see that expression in so many ways, because when you suppress an emotion, or you use other ways to distract yourself, energy has to go somewhere. Energy doesn't just disappear. Energy transmute, and it turns into physical form, it turns into physical pain, it turns into chronic illness and disease, and more and stuff. So tell us a little bit more. You work through that.
So 1st stage, notice. 2nd, name and locate. 3rd stage is allow, and that's probably one of the most tricky stages or aspects, because that's where we can have, just like you named, some of our defenses or protectors from protecting us from feeling pain or vulnerability can come up. So numbness, distraction, dissociation out of the body, being hypermental and over analyzing, distracting ourselves on our phone, over talking about it without feeling. There's a number of ways, and we all have our versions, but where we unconsciously sort of avoid feeling. And like you said, the benefit of that is that we temporarily kind of deny or put this pain aside, but it doesn't go away. There's a great book called Your Body Keeps Score by a New York Times bestseller, and it's by a Boston psychiatrist, researcher, and a professor. And as the name implies, that which is undigested in the moment gets stored for later. So a lot of great acupuncturists like yourself, they know that when you start to move energy in the meridians, sometimes emotion can come up. And a lot of people they want to keep avoiding that, but they don't understand all of those dead zones or places where it's associated is our energy and power to reclaim. and we're really functioning in a very limited way, and we're typically going through life compulsively repeating the same patterns, or avoiding a lot of aspects of life. And so, like the name implies, like the way out is through going right into the heart and breathing into the emotion, allowing it to be felt, and then next phase is releasing.
I love it. I can hear you talk about this all day.
It's such a pleasure speaking with you too.
Oh, yes, that's a really good way to do it. You work with individuals, couples, and teams,
Groups. Yeah.
companies, and also run workshop retreats and group training in the US and abroad. Now, with the current situation, are you still working? How does working with you look like?
Yeah, I work with some people internationally, and I work with some people locally here in San Diego. I see people in person, and some people feel more comfortable over Zoom. So I've already been working with people over Zoom in different states and different countries for a while. So that was not a big stretch for me. But I do really, if it's possible, do really love still working in person, and I have been doing that.
So like that's great. Yeah. So I know currently with upheaval with the COVID-19 and with all the racism and trying to find justice and trying to rise against all these different types of injustice. How does here, I know you mentioned about perspective taking, help us to discern between what is a me map and you map and we map?
Yeah, the people are getting into some pretty heated discussions over social media. My sense is some of the things people say behind the safety of their keyboard, some of the things people type, they probably would not say that to somebody else's face.
Yes, absolutely.
And regardless of what side you take or your perspective on what's happening, I think it's been a really good test for all of us, because I always come from the context that we're having a spiritual experience here, and our souls are having opportunities to acquire wisdom and learn lessons and deepen our capacity to love and express our unique purpose in the world. Those are the big four, I think. And so we have all kinds of scenarios that help us to do that. One of the things where I think a lot of people are given the opportunity in the last few months is critical thinking, open-mindedness, perspective taking, the ability to emotional composure, the ability to stay feeling and open and release what you're feeling versus kind of take on other people's thing and be overwhelmed. And then the fourth thing I think is people are being tested in perspective taking. And so, you're seeing a lot of people that have a tendency to take their own perspective and then polarize themselves and make the other person the enemy. And so we can talk a little bit about me and you and we maps if you'd like, based on that context. What are your thoughts on what I just said?
I think it's right on for sure. But a lot of times when I do treat a person, sometimes, especially somebody who is a caretaker for somebody else, if you take care of an elderly or children or family, whether that's a male or female, I think it's the training to do this perspective taking, whether it's your stuff, is their stuff, or our stuff, is really good to know. Yeah.
And I think you bring up even another level of it. I think it's first useful to talk at the kind of a more mental level of perspective taking, and where I got that me map, you map, we map is from Dan Siegel, a psychiatrist at UCLA, also at UCLA, who's the international head of interpersonal neurobiology. So it's a mouthful, but if you slow it down, interpersonal, looking at what's happening in the brain. And so they've discovered there's certain brain regions that are associated with awareness of self. A lot of those rely in the default mode network. And then there's areas of the brain that are related to being aware and being able to take your perspective. And then in a relational context of two or even a group, there's a third area that is the we, sometimes in a group called the we space. And so for example, being aware of my perspective, I could be aware of the sensations I'm having in my body. I could be aware of emotionally what I'm feeling. I could be aware of my thoughts and opinions and my values. Now, what tends to happen is that I collapse into just me, and then I'm relating to you. When I do that, I tend to relate to you as an object or an enemy. And so when I'm working with couples, even like really smart, really high functioning people, when we get triggered, there's a natural tendency to just collapse into just ourselves. So I'll have couples like repeat back what the other person said, and you'd be surprised how challenging it is for some people. And so it gives me so much patience and compassion. And I just remember this is a skill, and we're wiring in brain capacities, because what needs to be wired in is the capacity to stay with me, neither losing myself and overly jumping into your seat, but staying in my own center while I'm simultaneously able to repeat back what you said, hold your perspective, and even almost allow two people to be at the table where we may even can agree to disagree. And I've had some beautiful political conversations where like I still respect that person. I'm relating to them as a human, and we're still able to have different perspectives, but there's just still the love there.
I think everybody has an opportunity to learn this with you, Johny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just still holding their own and still be able to take on another person's perspective right now,
Mm-hmm.
especially this time, is so important.
So important.
Yeah. What other wise words can you share with us?
Well, when you say that, my attention goes to, it seems like it's both an honor and challenge to be alive during these times. You know, there's one of the poems in the new book, To the Mystics and Wayshowers, and it's an honoring and an ode to the healers and change makers and empowered women and social justice workers and mystics and yogis and qigong masters, and that amidst persecution and torture and misunderstanding and even kind of being murdered, that they still dedicated their lives to the evolution of humanity. And even amidst everything that's happening, I try to take an evolutionary context that we're part of this process of aliveness that's been living through us since the beginning of time. And it just happens to be taking form in humans over the last 200,000 years. And so if we have the opportunity to experience this life, then I ask the question, like, how may I be of service? And I think that's one of the things that when I was in the midst of my injury back in my young 20s, I made a vow that to say, if I ever get better, I want to use my life for good. I want to use my life to positively contribute to the world. I want to use my life to actualize my potential and live my purpose in the world. So for me, it's like, I've been preparing this time for a long time, and I'm feeling strong and sovereign and joyful and like, all right, I'm showing up. How am I going to be of service now?
Right. Excellent. I love it. I absolutely love your mission. I love that. And your span of compassion as well. Now, I really love one of these poem here in this book called Stewards of the Coming Age, because it really tells us about, the next generation or even current generation, or how you can be, what kind of path you can walk, even if you're just, doing your work right now, what else you can do to help others to rise as well. Can you read for us? Do you have the book?
Not close by.
Not close by. Okay.
I would invite you. Your voice is nicer than mine too.
So let's try this one. How's that? Stewards of the Coming Age. The new age is cool. Not all ungrounded spiritual bypasses. Sometimes erroneously bundled into this group are actually some really extraordinary beings. There were many heroic pioneers who've come before, using their lives to pathways of potentials for a time in the future. Maybe like the one now, Mars would be more ready to rise up. We now find ourselves alive at a very special time in the evolution of life here on Earth. We are in an unprecedented time at the threshold of a precarious transition and can really use the help of our best and brightest. There will be stewards to usher in this new epoch of the planet. Far from just woo-woo, there will be the ones who who are the most integrated. We need leaders who are embodied, connected, aware, loving, wise, ethical, and skillful to create practical emergence solutions for all of us. Sacred stewards of the new age, here now, and who will continue coming, leading the healing, evolution, and creation of new systems, dedicating their lives to the love, liberation, and betterment of life. We honor and deeply thank you all from the depths of our being. Thank you for spending time here today with us. All right, folks, that's it. I will post up the notes here where you can find Johny Blackburn and his work. And you can find the 2 books on Amazon as well. I'm going to put it up one more time, Eternal Rising on Amazon. And also the other book called Embodying Presence that you can find on Amazon as well. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon. And have a great day. Bye for now.